everybody, my name is Eric Hopkins and welcome to my YouTube channel. If you're finding me for the very first time or you are a returning viewer and have not yet done so, please click that like and subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you get all the notifications about when I put up new content right here on this channel. So I'm here tonight to do the review for Monday Night Raw for July 26, 2021. Before we get into that show, let's do a few thoughts here, or my quick thoughts on WWE Friday Night Smackdown from this last week. I was out of town for about the last few days, the end of last week and things like that, so I was unable to get to the SmackDown show. So let's just go over the show real quick before we get into Monday Night Raw. I thought the show started off pretty well with John Cena. Obviously, anytime John Cena is on the show right now, it's going to get a pop from the crowd, and he's going to be over. He come out to start the show, got a massive reaction. He mentioned returning to the Money in the Bank and Raw the next night. He briefly talked about the Firefly Funhouse alternate reality and stealing the Peacemaker costumes. Cena noted he returned to challenge Roman Reigns for the Universal title. He said he's about to go face to face with Reigns. He mentioned there was a huge sports news in Cleveland, and the fans started booing because, as much as a lot of people want to change certain things in our culture today, there's a lot of people who don't like that anymore, and changing the Cleveland Indians' names to the Cleveland Guardians it wasn't very over with this Cleveland crowd, for sure. He said he changed his name to Guardian, his middle name, I believe he said. Some fans booed, but others applauded, so they're, whatever. Cena turned his attention to Roman Reigns and said that SmackDown sucks with Reigns as champion. The fans cheered. Cena asked the audience what team they're on, and the fans erupted in a loud Cena chant. He asked if the fans are on Team Jorts or Team Cargo Pants, some relatively cheesy John Cena comedy here, but it's kind of John Cena's MO. He then asked if the fans are on Team Cena or Team Reigns. The fans were all on Team Cena. He demanded that Reigns come to the ring. The fans cheered and broke into another loud Cena chant. This brought out Paul Heyman. This is one of the best segments on this show. He got a huge reaction from the fans. The fans cheered wildly for a few seconds and then started booing. Heyman then said that Reigns couldn't hear Cena because he's not worth listening to. Heyman promised that Reigns is going to give Cena his answer later tonight. Heyman then started singing Cena's music and walked off. This was great because Paul Heyman went dun, 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 and was doing the whole dun, 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 dun. I mean, this is one of the best things I've ever seen Paul Heyman do. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It's cheesy, it's corny, it's typical WWE stuff, but I thought Paul Heyman pulled this off tremendously here. It was a great promo before he started acting goofy, but at the same time, Heyman pulled this off, and it was absolutely great. Cena and Heyman were good in this segment. The fans reacted huge to everything and made the segment great. Then they recapped Finn Balor. Finn Balor came out to defeat Sami Zayn. Really good match with a hot crowd. I thought this was very well done. It's good to see Finn Balor, at least for now. WWE's main roster is treating him well, so let's hope they keep that up because they ruined him last time. So I'm a little bit worried, but we'll see. We'll talk a little bit more about him here a little bit before we get to the end of this SmackDown show for sure. We had a Big E segment in the ring. I'm skipping over a few things. I'm just kind of going over the general highlights here. He announced he would take on Apollo. It was announced he would be taking on Apollo Crews at the Rolling Loud rapper concert or whatever they did that WWE had a few matches on here tonight. But that was apparently changed. But yeah, this was basically, Big E come out, with the briefcase and was celebrating that win. Apollo Crews interrupted him and, of course, said he may have won a contract, but he got the Intercontinental title. Then, of course, Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode got involved, and that brought out Nakamura and Cesaro. Nakamura and Cesaro. And basically, this ended up in a big brawl with the six-man going at it with Aziz getting involved as well. So apparently we're going to be getting probably a six-man tag between these individuals here. So we'll see where that goes. But to me personally, I don't understand why Big E is now, even though he's got the contract, and I know he can hold on to that contract for a long period of time. But they've got this thing in WWE where when you win the contract, you start losing matches, much like their championships, which we're going to get into on the Monday Night Raw show. So I don't understand why Big E is, kind of still in the Intercontinental title picture at this point. It would be a good time to elevate him to bigger and brighter things. I still think they should have put Big E over Monday Night Raw and had him feuding with Bobby Lashley after Bobby Lashley destroyed the New Day, which we've not seen since Money in the Bank. So at least they're selling that a little bit. But yeah, to me, Big E, and maybe you can hold off till after SummerSlam to bring the New Day back, and maybe Big E, shows up with a returning New Day. That could be okay. So maybe you don't have to pull the trigger yet on the Bobby Lashley feud, but I think that's got to be where they go with this. Doesn't serve Big E any favors to keep him on SmackDown against Roman Reigns. So I think moving him to Monday Night Raw to face Bobby Lashley after he beat Bill Goldberg, which is another thing I'm not super thrilled with. But I think that's where they'll put Big E eventually. But right now he's just kind of in a holding pattern, I think. So they're going to put him in a 6-man tag. So we'll see what they do. Then they went to a Rolling Loud concert in Miami. Wellllll walked out to a huge crowd. This did look like a big to be a massive crowd here. He got the crowd chanting, "We want the smoke," but I hate to say this. It sounded like this crowd just did not chant anything. This crowd, they came to see a rap concert. They did not come to see a WWE live event. And, of course, the 2 matches they gave them, they were absolutely dead for. They did not get into this. And it's hard to get a non-wrestling crowd into a wrestling show. It's hard to get wrestling crowds into wrestling shows some of these days. This was atrocious. I don't know why they did this. I get maybe you're trying to get new eyes on the product, but at the same time, this was not the right call. Angelo Dawkins defeated Chad Gable. It was an okay match, but again, this crowd was so not into it. No one really seemed to care. Gable missed a moonsault, but landed on his feet. Dawkins fired up and hit a twisting splash to the corner. Gable recovered and used a backslide for a near fall. Dawkins rolled to his feet and hit a spinebuster for the win. Typical okay SmackDown match. Then we had the SmackDown Women's Champion Bianca Belair defeating Carmella. Again, it was a short match at least, but this crowd just could not care less about WWE at this concert. So this did not do WWE's any favors here. Bianca Belair rode through and hit a fallaway slam. She followed up with a head spring splash for a near fall. Carmella briefly took over, but Belair fought back and hit the KOD for the win. So nothing major here. Again, these 2 matches, the crowd could have been, silent mainly because the matches they gave them weren't great. But at the same time, this crowd just was not into wrestling, I don't think. But I did hear some reports that this crowd wasn't even really into the concert too much. It was almost like they were just a dead crowd. So if that's the case, maybe it's not all WWE's fault. But at the same time, I don't think this crowd just cared about wrestling personally, because they just looked like they were sitting on their hands the whole time, even though they were standing, which was interesting. Back in Cleveland, we had some more stuff. We had an Edge segment here. Edge was basically called out Seth Rollins for the most part. Seth Rollins interrupted him. He called Edge grandpa and mocked him. Edge told him to shut up and told him to come to the ring for a face-to-face. He promised not to attack him. Rollins noted he would talk about how much he hates this city and people like Edge and Cena returning. Instead, he's thrilled that Grandpa Edge is in his ring. He called Edge a scumbag and admitted nothing would make him happier than crushing Edge's dreams. Rollins noted he had the chance to end Edge's career 7 years ago. I'm glad they brought this up, though, because they haven't shown it on camera, but they need to bring up the whole old footage of Seth Rollins about to crush Edge's skull with the one-man concerto years ago. And things like it might have been a curb stomp, whatever it was. But either way, the segment they had to where Edge still had his injured neck, they need to bring that up. I mean, they mentioned it here, but they need to bring it up even more. Drive that point home. That's what the feud should be based upon, not so much that Seth Rollins think Edge stole his Universal title shot or, whatever. This should be what it's based on. And of course, Rollins is going to base it on that, but Edge needs to base it on what he tried to do to him 7 years ago. So I think that would be great. But yeah, I mean, this was great. Edge admitted that he's a liar, and he's when he said he wasn't going to attack Rollins, but he punched Rollins, and Rollins fought back, but Edge hit a DDT to a huge pop. Edge set up for the spear, and the fans went crazy. Rollins avoided the spear and rolled out of the ring, and the fans erupted in boos because they wanted to see this, but obviously it's a tease, a big tease for where they're going in SummerSlam. So I thought this, along with the John Cena segment earlier on, these were 2 good segments on the show, which is more than I can say for Monday Night Raw, which we're going to get into here in a minute. Toni Storm defeated Zelina Vega. Fine short match. Welcome back, Zelina Vega. Another loss here. All right, I hope you're happy, honey, because Toni Storm, she looked good here, though, so happy to see her get a win, though, so I'm glad. But to me, it's just like, why are you booking either one of these women to lose? I don't understand. Zelina Vega seems to be slotted into that jobber role, so that's where she's going to be, unfortunately. Jimmy Uso defeated Dominic Mysterio in a 7-minute match or so. They're just kind of continuing this feud here for the most part from what I could tell. And of course, at the very end of the show, we had Roman Reigns came out to answer John Cena. Reigns and the fans were awesome in the segment. However, Cena seemed to disappear and didn't care that Reigns turned down his challenge. It just never showed up. It was a good ending to a fun SmackDown. But before Reigns spoke, the fans erupted in boos and a loud "You suck" chant, which to me feels piped in. There's a lot of things WWE are doing right now, especially during the Rolling Loud segment where they were piping in cheers because nobody in that crowd was moving. There was no cheers going on. And there's other things like on Monday Night Raw that you could just tell they're still doing it. Despite the fact that the Thunderdome is no longer a thing, they're still piping in crowd noise, and that's got to stop. I don't understand why they're doing it. probably because they want to dictate what it sounds like on television, just because their crowds are usually dead silent, especially during matches there, it seems like. He told the fans at home to acknowledge him, and the fans in Cleveland to acknowledge him. The fans broke out into a "what" chant. That chant needs to die. It's only hurting the talent in the ring. Personally, please stop it. I love Stone Cold as much as the next person, but come on now. Roman Reigns didn't let the chants bother him, and he kept going. He thought Hollywood would give Cena a new paint job, and he'd come back different. Instead, Cena's just a nostalgia act. It's the same thing over and over. Reigns said it's just like doing missionary position every single night. This was great. I thought it was funny. Of course, it turns out WWE, being the PG company that they are, apparently on their YouTube replays, they edited out that comment. So apparently we cannot have any fun anymore in WWE, unfortunately. It was a great line, though, and the fans gave it a big reaction on the live broadcast, so that was good for at least the moment that we got to see it. Reigns noted he couldn't see John Cena, but he won't see him in the main event of SummerSlam. Reigns then said his answer is no. The fans erupted in boos again. Suddenly, Finn Balor's music hit, and Reigns assumed Balor's out there to acknowledge him. Balor noted if Reigns won't accept Cena's challenge, maybe he'll accept Balor's. The fans popped huge for Balor's challenge and erupted in a yes chant. I wonder if Vince will try to curb that one if Daniel Bryan has indeed signed with AEW. We'll see what happens there. Reigns smirked and laughed it off. The fans then started chanting Roman's scared. Romans didn't appreciate that chant. That was a good chant by the crowd to kind of get Roman to be like, what? Anyway. So Reigns accepted Finn Balor's challenge, and the fans cheered, and Balor and Reigns faced off to end SmackDown. They did not say when or where this match is going to happen. Many people online are speculating that perhaps WWE changed their plans from John Cena and Roman Reigns at SummerSlam, and Finn Balor is now the one-on-one match. But come on now. I mean, Finn Balor will probably end up facing Roman Reigns on a SmackDown sometime soon, maybe even next week. They haven't announced when yet. But to me, Roman's going to crush Finn, and that sucks because, again, WWE does this thing where they call up guys from NXT. Granted, Finn has been up on the main roster before, but it's his first time back, and all of a sudden he got a win. He looked, he had a nice debut back, and now all of a sudden he's going to be put against Reigns. He's going to be fed to him to take the loss, and that's only going to hurt Finn Balor. You don't need to be beating Finn Balor right now. I mean, and obviously Finn Balor is not beating Roman Reigns. Nobody should be beating Roman Reigns until you get the next John Cena, the next superstar that you want to push to the moon, as Cameron Grimes would say on NXT. And Roman Reigns should be winning every single match. Until then, he should be the most dominant guy. And when he gets beat, it should be like, when Undertaker lost his undefeated streak at WrestleMania. Whoever takes that win against Roman Reigns should be the next major star you're going to push for years and years and years to come. And anything less than that is a total failure on WWE's part, in my opinion. So Finn Balor is going to lose unless they put Finn Balor in the WWE Championship match at SummerSlam and make it a triple threat with Cena, Reigns, and Balor. You could do that, but let's make no mistake here. Cena is getting his title match against Roman Reigns. Again, I've said John Cena doesn't deserve a title match because, in my opinion, I know WWE does not think like this, but in my opinion, you need to earn your title match and not by doing the stupid championship contenders matches that we're going to get into on Monday Night Raw. That's not how you book pro wrestling. I'm sorry. Build wins for the contender to keep the champion strong by having him do random matches or rare matches here and there. He doesn't have to be on each and every show, as Roman has not done a lot. Like, he was on tonight's show, but he didn't wrestle, which the crowd didn't like. But here's the thing. You don't need to overexpose Roman. Your champion should not be wrestling on each and every show, and they definitely should not be taking losses Monday Night Raw. I'm glad to see that, Finn Balor's getting an opportunity here, but at the same time, he's going to take that L. So prepare for that right now. Don't expect him to win against Roman Reigns. It's not going to happen. It should not happen. If it does, oh my, talk about the rants I could come up with that one. But anyhow, John Cena will be in the main event at SummerSlam against Roman Reigns. Still, take it to the bank. It's going to happen. All right, with that being said, let's get into Monday Night Raw. If any of you saw my video from last week, my Monday Night Raw review, I did a big-time rant on the fact that show was poorly booked. It was absolutely atrocious. The in-ring action is not WWE's problem. The problem with WWE is, even though they have good matches, they have horrible booked finishes. So when you book a finish poorly, the match they did prior to that, it takes away from it. And that's the problem that this company has right now. It's one of the major problems they have. But that's one of the things I noticed tonight in particular on Monday Night Raw, because this show was, it's hard for me to say it's as bad as last week's Monday Night Raw, because last week's Monday Night Raw was bad when it comes to the booking. This week's booking was just as poor and just as bad. So I'm probably not going to get as angry as I did on that one because they didn't beat the NXT champion again. However, I do have something to say about that match too. And you could say, "Oh, you're just not going to be happy with no matter what they give them, what they give you." No, that's not true. I would have been just happy with doing it a different way, and I'll get into that. It's not the fact that Karrion Kross won this week and Keith Lee lost. Again, I don't want Keith Lee losing, but then you'd be like, "Oh, well, Karrion Kross lost last week, but now he won. You're not happy either." No, of course I'm not, because of who he beat and how he beat him. It's like people need to understand that even though I want certain people to win, because that's the proper way you should be booking these young up-and-coming stars and the developmental talent that you brought up to the main roster, there are ways to book them. You understand that they decide who they wrestle, right? They don't put two guys together and it's like, all right, now we have to figure out the winner to make it work. No, they could choose to put Karrion Kross in the ring with somebody other than Keith Lee, and they could put Keith Lee in the ring with somebody other than Karrion Kross and book them both to win. They don't have to, face each other, book themselves into a corner, and one of them has to lose. So that's a problem. We're going to get into that a little bit more here in a little bit. But anyway, they need to start booking better all around the board. All right, so let's get into this more in detail here. There was a recap of last week's women's title match and the cash-in by Nikki Ash. Nikki Ash came out to start the show. Interesting, based on how they ended last week. She high-fived and hugged young fans on the way to the ring. The crowd chanted Nikki, and she proudly held up the belt. I ain't gonna lie, it seemed like the crowd was into her here, but it seemed like also during her promo, though, she wasn't getting the big cheers that you would think that she would get. But when she came out on her entrance, though, it seemed like people did like her. I've always wanted to say this. She said, "Welcome to Monday Night Raw." Nikki was happy. They were all together, and she was now their Raw Women's Champion. The crowd chanted, "You deserve it." She spoke about this being a dream come true. Now, I want to say this up front. I respect Nikki Ash. I respect Nikki Cross, ASH, whatever you want to call her. She's a great talent, and she does deserve the recognition she is getting. No doubt about that. However, I'm not a fan of this gimmick. I don't know if it's her time. I mean, it's probably time for her to be WWE Raw Women's Champion. But the way they booked her, and especially the way they book her by the end of the show, that's a big no-no to me. I mean, she's won a lot of these matches by flukes. And after tonight's show, it looks like she has won everything by flukes, because she gets a one-on-one match with Charlotte Flair and gets beat by the end of the show. So we'll get into that by the main event. So, but yeah, I mean, Nikki Ash is a wonderful human being from all things that I've seen online and things like that. So absolutely, she sounds like a sweetheart of a woman, and I'm happy for her in that regard, and I'm glad that she's getting recognition for her career. However, the way WWE books things, this is not going to end well for Nikki Ash, unfortunately. I got a bad feeling about this come SummerSlam, but we'll get into that. She never used to have the confidence she needed to reach the top because she was afraid to fail. She suddenly realized that if she failed, and it didn't have to be a big deal. Her new outfit gave her confidence, and she wanted to remind everyone that no matter what, you can overcome the odds if you believe in yourself, and we can all almost be superheroes. Yay! Ultra positivity here for the kiddies out there. Dream your dreams, and you can accomplish everything, which is great. But at the same time, again, I mean, it's okay to have a strong baby face like this that is very optimistic, but for whatever reason, I'm just not sold on it. I mean, and again, I've mentioned before, the Hurricane was a fun gimmick at the time. Molly Holly, same thing. They were never, Molly Holly might have been women's champion, but I don't recall the Hurricane ever becoming the world champion for sure. I just don't think this gimmick has got a lot of legs to it in the long run. It's definitely WWE style character that Vince McMahon likes, these 80s style characters and things like that. And I know superheroes are a big thing in cinema right now, but in professional wrestling, it's a goofy gimmick. So I don't know how long this is going to last. And I know Vince is obviously a big fan of this, so he'll probably push her here. But at the same time, look how he booked her at the end of this show. So I tell you, they just got some big issues when it comes to their champions and the way they book them for sure, and it's got to stop because it's making these shows completely unbearable. I mean, to be honest, most of this show I was watching it and just shaking my head, but we'll get into some of that more here. Charlotte Flair interrupted. Of course she did. Charlotte called Nikki a disgrace as champion and wondered how she could possibly represent the company dressed the way she does. She couldn't imagine Nikki on the Today Show with Al Roker, who wouldn't believe that she was champion. The crowd booed as Charlotte continued to rant. Now, granted, Charlotte had a great point here. I mean, she was not wrong when it comes to the fact that no one's going to take Nikki Ash seriously. She's right about that. As much as I I'm not the biggest fan of Charlotte Flair because I think they've tried to book her to be the greatest woman's champion or woman wrestler of all time. She's not. I mean, I went on to last week about how her reigns, most of them are meaningless. And this last one she just had that lasted a day was just as meaningless here. So, but yeah, I mean, but she makes a good point here when it comes to the gimmick of Nikki Ash kind of being ridiculous. She blamed Rhea Ripley for what happened and her losing the belt last week, which again, to Nikki Ash's, detriment here. She won after someone else beat Charlotte Flair up, which is how she beat Charlotte before, how she beat Ripley before. The only match that Nikki Cross really earned was Money in the Bank, and she snuck up when everybody else wasn't paying attention and didn't have to have any resistance. She just grabbed the thing and ran off. So how many these matches that Nikki are having, she's not really getting over a whole lot because she's not actually earning much. She earned the Money in the Bank to an extent, but everything else has been fluke wins. And they're even mentioning it in promos here. So, I mean, way to bury your new Raw Women's Champion by mentioning all that. I mean, it's like, come on, guys. Charlotte also noted that she hadn't even gotten to her feet yet when the match started. Again, another excuse to kind of say that, well, Nikki kind of stole it. Charlotte wanted a rematch at SummerSlam where Nikki would bow down to the real champion. The crowd booed. She said this injustice wasn't even Nikki's fault. It was the fans. Of course, you, the people, did it all. We're back to that with the heels now, constantly blaming the fans, which is something I'm sure Vince thinks all the time when we don't like things that he books. We're the problem, not the company. That's the big problem with this company right now. Triple H even said it himself. It's the fans set their expectations and want certain things, and when they don't get that, that's their fault. No. You book crap. Triple H doesn't book too badly on NXT, but when the Monday Night Raw and SmackDown shows are booked poorly, how is that our fault? No, it's not our fault. You give us a good product and we'll like the product. That's the problem, though. You're booking things ridiculous ways when they know for a fact it's bad because they're mocking it and putting it in our face. Because we got mad at Karrion Kross lost last week. We got mad that Keith Lee lost last week. So they decided to put both of them together and say, hey, one of them's going to lose. Are you guys happy now? It's a joke at this point. But we'll get into why they booked that match the way they did in a little bit. Charlotte said the same things heels always say about the fans until Rhea Ripley interrupted. Ripley got a good reaction, which is odd because they booked her badly as well. She got to smile more, according to Vince McMahon. She's kind of this, death metal, character. Why would she want to smile all the time? I mean, it doesn't fit her character. I know they're trying to make her into a babyface, but still. She didn't think people were jealous of someone who was champion for one day. She also noted that Charlotte got herself disqualified because she knew she was about to lose, which again is odd. It's like the way they've been booking disqualifications. There's no consistency, as I mentioned last week. Rhea Ripley thought she should be the one getting the shot at SummerSlam. Nikki wondered why either of them thought they would beat her. Nikki said the butterfly on her gear represented a metamorphosis that she represented change in the division. This division ain't going to change. Come on. That was funny, though. I mean, she said it with all sincerity. I ain't going to lie. This division is not good, especially on the Monday Night Raw. They desperately need Becky Lynch back. So I'm hoping she'll come back sooner or later, and hopefully she'll actually, facilitate some change. But I highly doubt that. This show is. I'm almost giving up on Monday Night Raw. I'm coming close to giving up on SmackDown too, outside of Roman Reigns and Edge. Cena's going to make it interesting, and no Cena tonight on Monday Night Raw, which is interesting too, because he's booked for Monday Night Raws in the future as well during the Summer of Cena. So we'll see a little bit more of him. But this women's division is not good. The crowd cheered Nikki, but some fans are booing whenever she mentions her gear. So see, right away we're already. She's 1 week into being champion. It sounds like, and you can say, "Oh, fans don't know what they want." No, the gimmick's not good. It wasn't good from the start. That's the thing. And fans are starting, to vocalize it more. They'll wait a little bit of time to see where it goes, because most fans are want to give the company credit, at least a little bit, to see where it goes. But after a while, no, fans are going to turn on it. It's just going to happen. And of course, the way they booked her tonight, they made her look weak. So good job. Charlotte and Rhea argued, and Charlotte referenced Nikki's Super Marvel outfit. Okay. And then, of course, that's typical WWE. You get 3 or 4 wrestlers in the ring bickering about who should get the title match, and out comes the authority figure. That's the way we start the shows almost all the time. Typical WWE formula. And that's another one of their issues. It's rinse, repeat, Week in, week out, same old stuff every single week, and it's no different here. So the Authority figures come out. Sonya Deville and Adam Pearce entered. Deville made a triple threat match at SummerSlam. Charlotte thought that was dumb. She wanted a non-title singles match against Nikki tonight, and Nikki accepted. Why? I mean, you just got what you wanted. Now, it's not a singles match at SummerSlam, admittedly. But what was the point? Because we have 3 hours to fill. That's why. Pierce made it official. Charlotte attacked Rhea and knocked her out of the ring, which made Rhea look stupid because she turned her back, knowing that Charlotte was right there. So she got knocked out of the ring before Nikki drop kicked Charlotte out of the ring as well. Earlier today, after this, we had, so I don't know. This segment just really didn't do it for me. It was just typical Monday Night Raw. Hey, let's throw people out there. Let's let them argue for a few minutes and bring out the Authority figures, and we'll make the main event. All right, sweet. It's just the way they do stuff. Always have to start a show with a 20-minute segment, seems like. Earlier today, Damian Priest said Sheamus didn't deserve to be champion. Sheamus made excuses and attacked people from behind. Priest planned on showing him why he deserved to be champion. I mean, and then, of course, they booked them in a match later tonight, a United States Championship Contenders match. As I said last week, I saw it right away. WWE is booking their championship opportunities now. Now, they've been doing it for a while where the contender or whoever they want to challenge for the title at the next pay-per-view will pin the champion, no matter who it is, outside of Roman Reigns. Every single champion on the WWE main roster, and apparently now the NXT, champion last week with Karrion Kross, every single champion on the main roster outside of Roman Reigns has been beaten by pinned or submitted to set up a future title match. Which begs the question, why would we want to watch it? Because you just gave it to us for free. The contender won. So either the contender's going to get the belt as they've proven they could beat them already, or the champion's just going to return and we're just going to be right back here where we started. The way to book proper pro wrestling championship feuds. Now, again, there's a lot of people online who said you should never beat a champion ever. For the most part, I agree with that. However, I do think that it's okay to pin a champion if you do it like once a year, once maybe every 2 years, or, something like where it's a shocking one-time thing where it's very rare and it's done, occasionally. Not every single week. And we'll get into how many champions lost on this show alone that they do every single week on Raw and SmackDown, mostly Raw, but SmackDown does it too, outside of Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns is the one champion they protect. They're doing an okay job with Bobby Lashley, but they beat him twice too, leading up to Money in the Bank. So I remember a day, because I've been watching wrestling since 1991, 1992, so it's been 30-some years. And imagine back in the day where WWE would have pinned, Bret the Hitman Hart as the WWE champion, or a Roddy Piper as the Intercontinental champion. Those guys got over as well as they did, or The Rock as, WWE champion. Now, he'd lose title matches, but he wouldn't lose, non-title singles matches because he was the champion. It might have happened again, occasionally, but not every single week. You cannot get people over, especially your champions, and keep them looking strong and keep the championship strong by having them constantly lose, whether it be by nefarious means, distractions, whatever. Most of the time it's roll-ups. That's their favorite finish. And we had at least one of them tonight. But again, Monday Night Raw is distraction finishes, DQ finishes, countouts, champions losing, rinse, repeat, rematches. That's all it is. And it's getting very, very old, and it's hard for us fans to continue to watch this garbage. Give us something new. That's all we ask. But you guys can't do that. There are other wrestling companies who are doing it 1,000 times better. And I don't mean just AEW. At this point, I'd watch Impact, or NXT does it better, even though they have some issues at times as well because it's still WWE. But for the most part, they booked Karrion Kross as a killer for 2 years straight, and you beat him in 2 minutes on this Monday Night Raw debut last week. All right, so I'm starting to get a little heated here. I'm trying to not be as crazy as I was last week. So, this show just frustrates me. Monday Night Raw, the main roster itself, and they wonder why their fans are checking out in droves, and why their ratings 5 or 6 years ago, their ratings were in the 4 million range. 4 million range, 5 million range, and you could say, the Olympics are on, or, the NBA playoffs, or things like, no. All those things were going on 5-6 years ago or whatever as well. In the Olympics case, 4 years ago. But in that span, they have dropped significantly. Monday Night Raw is doing all-time lows, ladies and gentlemen. And it's got nothing to do with other sports on TV right now. What do you think Monday Night Raw is going to do when NFL football comes back on Monday Night Football? They're going to get worse. They are doing all-time lows, and I wouldn't be surprised if this show last week had a boost due to John Cena and coming off a pay-per-view. And, of course, fans being back for the first time. And you had these surprises with Goldberg, also not on this show tonight. Things like that. You can't sustain that every week. I said last week they blew their wad the first week back and basically, put all their surprises outside of Becky Lynch on one show. And tonight it showed they had nothing really else planned. They had no Cena, no Goldberg, none of that. And what we got tonight was just poor booking and rematches. Called it. All right, we had Damian Priest defeating Sheamus in a non-title match. Again, a championship contenders match. So in order to get the title match at the pay-per-view, you must pin the champion. What does this do for the champion? Again, I hate to keep harping on this, but this is the whole problem. Say what you want about AEW. You don't have to like AEW. That's perfectly fine. If you have a preference and you prefer WWE, more power to you. However, I can't understand why you guys would like this unless you're just new wrestling fans. Us older wrestling fans understand this is not the way you book pro wrestling. AEW does not pin their champions. If they do, it's every so often. It's not every single week. The Young Bucks took a loss a few weeks back. Okay, fine. It'll be interesting to see how AEW this week does their 10-man tag to set up the Hangman Page possible title match against Kenny Omega at All Out, because they've got to book themselves in a little bit of a corner here unless they're going to have Hangman Page lose. But everybody else on the team that Hangman Page has to beat all are champions. So it'll be interesting to see how they do that. But again, they don't do it often. So if they do it this time, it's not going to be as bad. It's not good. I don't prefer it that way. But if they were going to beat, Hangman Page, Kenny Omega and the Bucks and the Good Brothers, who are all champions right now, whether it be AEW or Impact, I don't think it's good to beat those champions. But to do it once is okay. Not each and every week. And I hope they don't even beat them this week, but we'll see what they do. But anyway, that's why I wouldn't kill them as much, because they only do it sparingly. But here we are. Damian Priest defeats U.S. champion Sheamus. Sheamus went for a cloverleaf, but Priest kicked him repeatedly in the chest. They had a strike exchange that led to a knee strike for a close near fall. Sheamus tried pounding Priest's chest, but Priest came back with a kick and hit the lights and hit the lights for the pinfall win. That's his finisher. The crowd was into the near falls, though. And again, this wasn't a bad match. This was actually a good match. But to me, when you book the finish where you're pinning the champion, to me, it takes away from the good match they just had. So I can't look back at this match and feel like this was a fun match and it's worth, remembering, because I know what you did at the end, and you beat a champion, made him look terrible. And now when Damian Priest faces Sheamus, I'm like, well, he already beat Sheamus. So personally, why should I want to watch that again? 2, Sheamus doesn't look nearly as strong as he did before. Damian Priest clearly should win the title. It would have been better if Damian Priest had won some matches against other contenders, which makes more sense if it's a championship contenders match. Why shouldn't the championship contenders matches be contested between 2 contenders going for the title? That way, when one of the 2 contenders loses, we have a clear-cut number 1 contender, and then they get the champion at the pay-per-view. Both are strong, and you want to see who wins. That drives people to want to go see that show, to buy tickets to that show, and if you're still selling it on pay-per-view, to buy the show. It would sell people to want to see it on the service, on the Peacock. So, again, that's how you properly book title matches. Most other companies do this properly. I don't know why WWE can't get out of their own way, because they probably feel like it's an outdated thing, and they feel like this is the right way to do it, and everybody else is wrong. Hate to tell them, they're wrong. Beat a champion here. But then we had AJ Styles and Omos against the Viking Raiders. The Viking Raiders came out here to a pop, which, if you looked at the crowd, no one cared. They were piping in noise here, in my opinion. There's no doubt about that. This is the second straight week that Styles and Omos did not even get an entrance, which is very strange for the champions here, not to get an entrance. Perhaps they don't want us seeing the crowd popping for the heels. Very, very likely. That's the problem. WWE would have been living in this echo chamber, this bubble called the Thunderdome for the last year or so. And they've been able to dictate the crowd noise they get for each superstar they have. Now they got live crowds back. Live crowds are going to react the way they want to react, and it may not be the way WWE wants them to react, and WWE doesn't like that. The people on the Titantrons or the screens in the Thunderdome were told to cheer and boo certain places in the show for certain wrestlers, and if they didn't do that, they got booted off the Titan or off the Thunderdome. So they weren't allowed to be on screen. That's manipulating your audience. And live crowds don't go for that garbage. You can pipe in crowd noise to try to get, freaking reactions. You might get some people to cheer along, because that's what they're hearing. And I think that's their hope. But it just, WWE, cannot just allow the audience to be organic and listen to their audience. They will tell them the way to book a show if they will listen for it. But WWE has plans, and whatever the fans want, screw the fans. It's not about them. It's about what we want to do. And that's why WWE is not good, and their booking is horrendous. So yeah, we had Styles tagged in Omos, who gave Eric a delayed scoop slam before chucking Ivar from the ring. Omos gave Eric a tree slam. Styles tagged in and hit a very good springboard 450 for the pinfall win. So Styles and Omos retain. Not a bad tag team match. At least the champions retained. But again, it kind of begs the question, why did we have this whole feud to begin with? All it did was kill time. And of course, AJ Styles took a loss in like 3 minutes to, I believe it was Ivar a few weeks ago. It was one of the two. So why did you have to pin AJ Styles? I mean, clearly a guy should not be losing to, one half of this tag team. AJ Styles is a world championship contender, or he should be, but now he's stuck in this feud because they're trying to get over Omos with AJ Styles, which is great, but Omos has got a long way to go, and AJ Styles, who is a former world champion in his own right, it's kind of, and I get it. Not everybody can be on top at all times. I understand that. But at the same time, it's kind of, not using AJ Styles' talents to the best of his abilities. But he is at a stage in his career where he's trying to get over young talent. Nothing wrong with that. Absolutely. So in that regard, I have no problem with it. But I don't know. I just don't understand why we had this whole feud to begin with. It seems like we're, again, in a holding pattern until Randy Orton gets back at the beginning of August from wherever he's been. We don't know why, and they're going to be doing RK Bro against AJ and Omos most likely. Let me take a drink of water real quick. All right. Second hour begins. Jinder Mahal. Yeah, that was just the first hour. Jinder Mahal cut a promo before the upcoming match, which, again, Jinder Mahal and Drew McIntyre have this long history with 3MB, and they've been friends for years. Why aren't we drawing on that for the story you're telling between the two? No. The story we're telling is it's over a sword and a motorcycle. Let's keep that in mind. Mahal was disgusted that the crowd cheered as Drew McIntyre clobbered Shanky with a chair last week, which they showed a replay of, the 34 times or whatever it was he hit him with that chair. And oh my God, the zooms, the cuts, oh, my head hurts so bad. Do we have to shoot it like this? No, Kevin Dunn, we don't. When McIntyre didn't respond, he wanted McIntyre to apologize. When McIntyre did not respond, Mahal said he brought his lawyer with him, and they planned on suing. Okay. Mahal gave him one more chance to apologize. McIntyre told him to shut up. He asked the crowd if he should apologize and buy them a steak dinner. So, again, when you ask a crowd to cheer, and Cena said it last week, when you're great, the crowd will cheer for you. You don't have to, ask them to cheer. Cena did it. Now Drew McIntyre is asking the crowd to cheer. They booed. So he asked if he should beat Veer within an inch of his life. They cheered for that because no one likes Mahal and Veer and Shanky. McIntyre led the crowd in a Drew is going to kill you chant directed toward Mahal, and the crowd was happy to oblige. Again, leading the crowd where he wants them to go. And there's nothing wrong with having the crowd eat out of the palm of your hands, but you're kind of forcing the crowd to do what is scripted. And it comes off fake, is what it does. Drew McIntyre versus Veer, and then a DQ, which, I mean, Jinder Mahal slides the chair into Veer. Veer has it in his hands. Drew McIntyre hits him with the Claymore. The kick smashes the chair into Veer's face, and Veer gets disqualified. What? Drew McIntyre's the one who, granted, Jinder gave Veer the chair, so he slid it in there, and Veer had it. Okay, great. But Drew is the one who hit the chair to kick the chair into Veer's face. Drew's the one who used the chair to his advantage, and Veer got disqualified. Drew McIntyre is the one who should have been disqualified here. I don't care if Veer was the one holding the chair or not. Now, there are people online who are saying, oh, well, the announcer must have screwed up. No. This was this was booked this way because they have no consistency. Again, they had, Rhea Ripley pulled a plastic piece off of an announce table and swung it backward and it hit Charlotte. That's a disqualification. But Charlotte Flair can put Rhea Ripley's legs in the steel steps at ringside and crush her knee. That's perfectly fine. And this here, Drew McIntyre clearly used the chair to his advantage, and Veer is the one who loses. What? That's not how this works. The one who uses the weapon is supposed to be the one to be disqualified. So I don't get it. Obviously they're trying to make Drew look stronger. Okay, fine. Nothing wrong with that. But at least they're not, having him, pin champions or something like that. He's pinning Jinder Mahal's lackeys who can take the losses, or in this case it was a DQ. But yeah, it's better than most. But at the same time, that made no sense. That disqualification was ridiculous. So yeah. However, seconds later, Corey Graves said that Veer was getting a DQ win in the record books. So, okay, maybe it was, but even so, it's like, get that right. It looked bad. Most people didn't see that or hear Corey Graves say it. So yeah, something went wrong here, or they just booked it poorly. Either way, no good. You're supposed to be the best wrestling company in the world, and you're making these mistakes. No. They actually replayed Eva Marie tripping in Alexa's playground last week. Again, one of the worst trips I've ever seen in my life after this. So, yeah. Eva Marie told Doudrop not to worry about last week because if they won tonight, they'd be closer to the tag team titles. Yay, we're getting another, championship contenders match. Oh, boy. Tomorrow night, can anything stop Karrion Kross's reign of destruction? I know who could, Jeff Hardy, but he wasn't on the show, and we'll get into why here in a minute. Tag team champions Natalya and Tamina defeated Eva Marie and Doudrop in a non-title match. Doudrop knocked Tamina down with a crossbody, but instead, for going for a cover, she tagged in Eva Marie, so she could make the cover instead, and Tamina kicked out. A Lily Lucian video suddenly played on the screen, which was, again, a distraction finish, which is something that they love to do, with Alexa Bliss's doll cutting a promo on Eva Marie and kind of acting like she was Hollywood, and she was going to start the Lily Lucian. Gag me. It's pretty much a parody of Eva Marie's videos for when she was returning, featuring Bliss's doll. Marie was distracted by the video again, so that allowed Tamina to super kick her for the pinfall win. Unfortunately, before this happened, Natalya appeared to hurt her leg during an exchange with Doudrop. Medical staff assisted her on the outside, and Tamina had to help her to the back after the match. She couldn't put any weight on this leg, so this isn't good. It looks like it's a rough injury for Natalya. I don't want to speculate. It could be an ACL. It could be whatever. It may just, but whatever it was, she was not putting any weight on this. So this might not be very good for the women's tag team championships here. I don't know if they'll have to be vacated or what will happen, but it doesn't appear like she'll be back anytime soon. Now, again, I don't know what the severity of the injury is or anything like that. I'm just speculating, but from the looks of it, it looked like this is going to be something that's going to keep Natalya out for some time. But we'll wait and see how she is. Hopefully, we'll get some updates on her, and our best wishes here on the channel go out to Natalya. Regardless of whether we criticize the show and things like that, we have all the respect, and me myself personally have all the respect in the world for all these talents. The talents on WWE is not the issue. They are working their tails off to make a lot of these things work and trying to do what creative and Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard have for them to work on camera. And it's just sometimes it's so bad, no matter how these talents work, it's not going to work well. But best wishes to Natalya. Let's hope and pray everything's good for her. NXT, so yeah, again, at least the champions won here, so that's a good thing. And they, defeated Eva Marie, which is a joke at this point. So, again, she could take the loss. No wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Doudrop don't need to be losing necessarily. And eventually, hopefully, this is going to lead to a Doudrop Eva Marie breakup, because Eva Marie is why they let her stay and then they let people like Ruby Riott go. I can't for the life of me understand why. Ruby Riott's going to have a great career in some other company, and they're going to, and WWE's going to rue the day they let her go for sure. I have no doubt about that. NXT champion Karrion Kross versus Keith Lee. So, again, you beat Karrion Kross last week. He loses to Jeff Hardy. Okay. Bad. I don't know why you booked that. I know. Jeff Hardy is a former WWE champion. He's a legend. However, he's done nothing in the last 6 months to a year. He's been jobbing to guys on Main Event. Week in, week out. Jinder Mahal, Veer, The Miz. He's been jobbing to everybody. and you have him beat the current NXT heavyweight champion who was undefeated for 18 some months. Tell me why that makes sense. Again, I'm going to rat on it again here on Monday Night Raw this week because it's still so bad. They never should have done it. And of course, they knew NXT was pre-taped last week, so Hunter couldn't respond. And apparently, I guess on last week's taping for this week's show that's going to be airing on Sci-Fi the next 2 weeks because of the Olympics, apparently Triple H and the NXT crew had to reshoot the Karrion Kross entrance because apparently when Karrion Kross came out, the crowd was chanting Hardy so loudly, it ruined the entrance. They had to lie to their fans to get them to stay because they told them there was going to be some surprise at the end of the show. And when they stayed, it was just Karrion Kross's entrance reshot. So they've ruined Karrion Kross even in NXT at this point. I mean, the crowd watches Monday Night Raw. The Raw and SmackDown crowd may not watch NXT. They should be because it's the better of the three shows. But for whatever reason, NXT crowd will watch all three shows, as bad as the other two are. But yeah, and myself, if you watch our AEW Fyter Fest Night 2 review where we went over NXT a little bit, I said on that show, I didn't review NXT last week. Me and Brandon both took a night off because the way they did Karrion Kross, we didn't feel like watching NXT because it was like, what's the point? Now we'll probably go back and watch it tomorrow because we've had a little time to recover from that travesty. But it just sends a message to the entire audience. It sends a message to NXT that they don't matter in the grand scheme of things. And so why should the audience? It's not good booking. So they beat him last week with Jeff Hardy. They beat Keith Lee against Bobby Lashley. Now, at least Bobby Lashley was the WWE champion. But again, you don't have to book Keith Lee against Bobby Lashley. You don't have to book Karrion Kross against Keith Lee here. And you don't have to book Keith Lee against Karrion Kross. Because now you guaranteed and you booked yourself into a corner that one of these two guys have to lose. And both of these guys who are being brought up from NXT, who are young in their careers, both uber talented. Keith Lee a little more than Karrion Kross, but Karrion Kross has been booked so well in NXT. He's a talent. Now, granted, they've stripped him down much like they did Keith Lee. They took his, this entrance lighting and his girl away. They took Keith Lee's music away and things like that. And, so they've killed both these guys from the word go. And now one of them is going to have to lose because they have to wrestle each other. Unless you just do some screwy finish, which we did not get at least. But again, I would prefer to see winners and losers. But when you got two guys in the ring who need wins, maybe you shouldn't be booking them in a match against each other. Now, the reason why they booked this is because Jeff Hardy was probably going to be wrestling Karrion Kross again this week because Monday Night Raw loves rematches. But Jeff Hardy came down with COVID-19. So they had to change their plan. So they booked Kross versus Keith Lee. Now, why couldn't you book Kross against Shelton Benjamin? No, you had to have him. You had to have them being destroyed by the WWE champion later. Which again, I got no problem with that. But you couldn't book Karrion Kross or Keith Lee against anybody else besides each other to take losses. And that way Keith Lee and Kross could get wins here that they desperately need on the main roster. Because right now, you're booking... Now, Kross looked okay in this, but Keith Lee did not. They both didn't have a great match with each other, which is not going to help their case with the higher-ups here for sure. But yeah, I don't know. This wasn't a big thing for me. It ended up being, Keith Lee tapped out to the Kross jacket. He put up a fight, but at the same time, he tapped out. So the crowd seemed to like Keith Lee here. It just appears like the main roster crowd does not care for Karrion Kross because, again, they've stripped him down to nothing. I mean, he's great on the main. Now, he's not the most seasoned, wrestler in the ring yet, but some of these guys in NXT have made him look like $1 million. But his entrance and Scarlett, have made him look great as well. And you took both of those away from him. And when you don't book him strong, now you booked him stronger in this match by getting the win, good. But by sending him back last week when Jeff Hardy beat him, you've now got to build him back up, and that's going to take a lot of time. It's much like what WWE did with Walter, or Walter, whatever you want to call him, from NXT UK when they brought him up in the Survivor Series match. When they beat him, he was the first guy to be eliminated in the Survivor Series match a few years back. And Walter is, again, another guy who doesn't lose on NXT UK. He's a dominant force, and he's amazing to watch when booked properly. But it just shows you what the main roster thinks of NXT and NXT UK. They could care less about those brands. And every time you bring up somebody like this, you got to kill them from the word go. And you wonder why these guys don't get over. And then you're like, oh, well, they don't have the it factor. They don't have what it takes to be on the main roster. No, it's because you're booking them poorly. Don't blame the fans for not cheering for these guys when they're like, well, we don't know why they don't like them now. They liked them in NXT. All right, let's move on here. Sarah Schreiber interviewed Nikki about her match tonight. Nikki said she was no longer afraid to fail. She wanted all the little boys and girls to know that the hardest challenges were worth fighting for. She knew that no matter what happened tonight, she'd be defending the title at SummerSlam. Ripley showed up. Ripley planned on winning at SummerSlam, but also wanted to see Nikki give Charlotte hell tonight. So the babyface, go get him, champ. That sort of thing. We had a segment which I'm kind of surprised they actually followed back up on here. The next two segments were probably the best thing on the show. Everything else has not been real good. But the next two segments, I thought Monday Night Raw did a pretty decent job. I'm going to give them credit where it's due. So I'm not just going to totally bash them. If they do something good, I will tell you. I'm going to always be honest with what I feel is what they're doing. And I feel like this was good. Mansoor and Mustafa Ali, or Mustafa, or however you want to pronounce it, defeated Mace and T-Bar. It was only 3 minutes, but Mansoor saved Ali from being attacked by Mace. Then Mansoor rolled up Mace in the ring for the pinfall win. The roll-up notwithstanding, which is WWE's favorite finish right now, Mansoor, they did a good job here because, for one, they're building up Mansoor and, Ali, even though they got some dissension because Ali doesn't, agree with Mansoor sometimes and was trying to teach him things, all that. But by getting a win over here over Mason T-Bar, who are going nowhere at this point, since Retribution, they're done. Dominic Dijakovic deserves more for sure. It's a shame that they've buried him because he's another NXT guy who's got a lot of talent and would be great on the main roster if done right. Hopefully they'll eventually go back to, just call him Dijakovic. I know they love their one-name titles and stuff like that, so call him Dijakovic and let him go, run roughshod like he did in NXT. That would build him back up. But again, in this case, they built up Mansoor and Ali. They got a clean win. Mansoor got a good babyface pop. They're building a babyface here, and they didn't beat a champion or something like that. So again, booked right. Nothing wrong with the way they booked this. Absolutely good job in this case. So it was nice and refreshing to actually see them do that, in my opinion. So yeah, I mean, but again, you're building up dissension. Now, if the rumors are true, WWE is going back to Saudi Arabia in October. If you continue to build this team's going to get a good pop in that crowd. If that's only for a pop, who cares? But at the same time, it's good to see Mansoor get a good win here. And all things considered, I thought they booked it well. So, nothing stellar, but at the same time, it was a step in the right direction, I thought. So I'm going to give them credit where it is due here. Then we had another good segment, I thought. Bobby Lashley responds to Goldberg's challenge, so to speak. MVP spoke about Goldberg disrespecting Lashley as the crowd chanted for Goldberg. Lashley didn't plan on dignifying Goldberg with a response. He said this ring belonged to him. That's when Cedric Alexander interrupted. Cedric Alexander said that Lashley disrespected him by kicking him out of the Hurt Business. Alexander claimed Lashley did so because Lashley knew he was better. He wanted an opportunity against Lashley. Shelton Benjamin then interrupted him. Benjamin noted how annoying Alexander's voice was. The crowd laughed at this, which, okay, who cares? Benjamin wasn't here to complain about the Hurt Business. He wanted to give Lashley a real challenge. As they argued, MVP told them they didn't have time for this. Lashley then grabbed the mic from MVP and very, bluntly said, I'll take both of them on right now at the same time. Bobby Lashley was in a no BS mood. And I thought Bobby Lashley sounded really good here for that little bit there. But again, why... Okay, you're making Bobby look good, but you couldn't use these two guys to go up against Keith Lee or Karrion Kross earlier in the night, maybe giving Bobby the night off. That would have been okay to me. But anyway, all that being said, 1-on-2 handicap match. Bobby Lashley, outside of the fact that Bobby Lashley sold some for these two guys, it was 2-on-1, so okay, I'll give it to you. But Bobby Lashley should have ran through these guys in 5 minutes. Well, actually, it was only 2:42 as it was, but maybe a minute, and then not gotten any defense in at all. He should have just been running offense all over these two guys. And for the most part, he did. But he did sell a little bit here. And I was like, well, why are you selling at all? But anyway, so he gave Benjamin a jackhammer and gave Alexander a dominator on top of Benjamin. He then pinned both of them at the same time. He got the Roman Reigns double pinfall from WrestleMania this year where he basically destroyed both men. So, yeah, Bobby Lashley looked dominant. No Bill Goldberg here. Again, we don't need to see Bill Goldberg. I wish they wouldn't do that match, but we're going to get it. But at least in this case, I thought they booked Bobby strong. Much better than him taking losses against Xavier and Kofi for sure. I'll take this any day of the week. Good job. John Morrison with The Miz and their dripsticks versus Riddle. Okay, Miz sprayed Riddle with the dripstick, and Morrison used the distraction for Schoolboy, but Riddle kicked out and hit a knee strike. Riddle then knocked down Miz with a PK. Miz again acted like a turtle that could not get up, and Riddle mocked him. So again, WWE takes this thing where Miz got knocked on his backside and on his back where he couldn't get up out of the wheelchair because he's got an ACL injury, and he's sitting there on his back, squirming like a turtle on his shell on his back who can't get up. They did that a few weeks ago. They thought it was funny, so we must run it into the ground. Back from the break, Riddle knocked down Morrison with a springboard dive. Styles and Omos sauntered down at this point to the ring, and Morrison used a couple of kicks for 2, but Riddle came back with a powerbomb and knee strike for 2. Riddle began climbing the ropes, but was distracted by Styles grabbing his scooter. Omos snapped the scooter in half, which we saw that coming a mile away. Ever since he's had that scooter, we knew that thing was going to get destroyed. Riddle was very upset about this. I believe he even said that was from Randy. I thought that's what he said. I could be wrong. The distraction allowed Morrison to slam Riddle and hit Starship Pain for the pinfall win. So, distraction finish. Again, it looks like we're setting up AJ and Omos versus Riddle and Orton whenever Orton comes back. Most likely it's going to be a match at SummerSlam. Again, we kind of saw this coming a mile away, so it seems like now they're starting to slowly start that build. But did you have to have Morrison beat Riddle? Again, I'm one of them guys who I'm not real big fan. I mean, Riddle's talented as all heck. All these guys in WWE are talented. Again, that's not the question. But Riddle has got this gimmick. Much like Nikki Ash, it's a joke. Bro. It was better in NXT. It wasn't nearly this cheesy and cringe. But if you're going to build Riddle, again, I get this was a singles match, but if you're going to build Riddle and Orton for AJ and Omos, perhaps neither one of Orton or Riddle should be losing. Same goes for AJ and Omos. Neither team should be losing, period. Build them, keep them strong. You're supposed to have, this is why back in the day, WWE and other wrestling companies used jobbers and had jobber matches because, yes, I get it. Jobber matches are supposedly boring because you know who's going to win. But the thing is, by using jobbers, you're able to build up wins, build up credibility, and then you occasionally have them get in the ring with somebody who's got more talent and have a competitive match. But then you book it to where the one who's supposed to win wins, and the one who can afford the loss loses. And then the winner continues to move up and goes against the champion. And everybody looks strong. This is how you do it. You don't have to book people against each. Now, in Morrison's case, he's not won anything in a long time. So he should be the one losing here. It's like the Jeff Hardy thing against Karrion Kross. He's done nothing outside of his flips and Johnny Drip Drip and America's Most Wanted. That garbage. Maybe they sell t-shirts. I don't know. I'm sure the kids like it. But at the same time, it's just... save me. And I know you're going to say, well, don't watch it then. Well, I'm trying to review these shows for the channel. Because Monday Night Raw, as much as I don't like Monday Night Raw sometimes and SmackDown, they are the most watched wrestling shows in the world outside of maybe New Japan, in Japan or something. But in the States, as of right now, they are the two shows that get the most ratings. That may change one day. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But for now, I got to watch these shows if I want to continue to have content for the channel. Let's see here. Styles laid out Riddle with a Styles Clash after the match, and the crowd chanted for Randy Orton, but he did not show because, again, he's off TV for whatever reason. But he's supposed to be back sometime early August, so we'll see him soon, most likely. Reginald defeated R-Truth to retain the 24/7 championship in a minute and a half. At least for once, we got a 24/7 championship match in the ring, and it wasn't just a bunch of guys running around. We actually had R-Truth and Reginald in the ring wrestling each other. Now, R-Truth was mic'd up during this entire match, which made it out to be a comedy joke and completely ridiculous. And this crowd was not into it whatsoever because this title is a complete joke. Get rid of it. This title is terrible. Burn it. Set it up on fire. Put it in a dumpster. Set it down, sail it down seas or whatever. Get rid of this thing. Reginald decided to compete in a full suit, which again, it just made no sense. They did a lot of comedy, obviously, but the crowd wasn't laughing because it was bad comedy. Reginald eventually managed to do a flip into a cradle for the pinfall win. Okay, cool. The 24/7 crew, including Humberto Carrillo, who was just challenging Sheamus. I guess that's over, which thank God we've seen that a month. He ran down after the match, but Reginald flipped over the group and over the top rope to escape the ring, and they all just looked baffled instead of going after him. So, yay, Reginald could do flippy flips. That he's good at. Can't say he's a good wrestler because we haven't seen enough of it, and I doubt he is. Wow. Okay, so Charlotte Flair and Nikki Ash in a non-title singles match in the main event. This was still considered a championship contenders match, even though Charlotte was already granted a title match at SummerSlam, regardless of this outcome. So again, why are we doing this? You're booking yourself in a corner where you're going to make one of the three contenders, the two contenders and the champion, look bad heading into SummerSlam if you're not going to have a screwy finish. And we didn't have a screwy finish. And again, at least they did some distraction finishes on the show and a DQ, so they have been doing some screwy finishes. But the finishes they did cleanly, they were booked badly. The wrong person won when it comes to Wrestling 101 and building a feud for a pay-per-view. It's not hard to do this. I mean, I'm just some schmo on YouTube who's watched wrestling for 30 years, but I feel like I sometimes have more knowledge than some people who are writing and booking this show. And they're supposed to be the best in the world, ladies and gentlemen. They're not. It's terrible. So yeah, I don't understand why this match had to happen. And if Charlotte already had the match, I guess she just wanted to prove a point. But of course Charlotte does, because she has to be the one who's number one. I hate to tell Charlotte though, Becky Lynch is number one. Sasha Banks is probably number two. Charlotte is not the greatest thing since sliced bread, as this company would like you to believe. I hate to say it. She's a talented wrestler, but again, she's not the greatest wrestler in the world. A lot of her titles title reigns are meaningless. I mean, it's just the narrative they try to push to make you believe that she's the best in the world, and that's not the way it is. People who watch this for long enough know what WWE does behind the scenes, and they can tell by how they book stuff what they're trying to shove down your throat. And one of these days, as I said last week, Charlotte's going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, and she's going to be the 17-time or 16-time women's champion. And Corey Graves even mentioned tonight, you know, she's won more titles than any woman in WWE history. So they're already pushing that narrative. But again, how many of those titles, like last week where she held up for a day, how many of those reigns counted? Some of them did, but not the amount that they're telling you that she won. Which she did win them, but at the same time, it's like they don't mean anything. That's the problem. Charlotte was in full control and at times was not taking Nikki seriously. Nikki came back after a break with a crossbody to the outside, followed by a crossbody in the ring, a clothesline, and running bulldog for two. Charlotte followed up with chops, but Nikki came back with a tornado DDT. Nikki tried a flying crossbody, which is how she won last week, but Charlotte rolled through into a cover for the pinfall win. So at least they played off of last week when it come to the finish. I'll give them credit for that. That's good, bringing that in. That's storytelling. I get it. But again, why? You just had Nikki Ash win the belt last week. And this week, she's losing clean to supposedly the greatest women's champion of all time. I guess that's how they're going to justify it, you know. But it just goes back to the problem. Stop pinning your champions. Nikki Ash, 1 week in. Now, granted, as we discussed, she's had some fluky wins. But 1 week in, she looks like she's a joke. She should have beat Charlotte here. Now, granted, this match never should have happened. It should have been, you know, Charlotte or Nikki or Rhea in matches that had nothing to do with each other. You can have them looking on the outside or whatever, but they shouldn't be wrestling each other. But I'm sure we're going to get, between now and SummerSlam, we're going to get Rhea versus Nikki. We're going to get Charlotte versus Rhea again. We're going to get all this stuff because they don't know how to book things. These women should all three look strong going into the pay-per-view. But you can't do that because, for one, your roster's not deep enough. You don't have enough women, and then you sent Naomi to SmackDown. So everybody on your women, this is basically the only women on the roster, and of course Natalya got hurt. So at this point, Alexa Bliss should be taking losses. But they're trying to build her up against, you know, Eva Marie and her doll or whatever's going on there. But again, it's just not good booking, period. Wrestling 101, it's got it. They should know better than this. They have known better than this in the past. But for whatever reason, they don't care anymore. They're bored or something. I think they just lost their touch. And it's sad because they've got other companies like AEW who are getting to a point where they're going to be, you know, strong enough to be competition for WWE. They've already pretty much laid waste to NXT. And they're only a few ratings away. If all the rumors are true and CM Punk and Bryan Danielson, aka Daniel Bryan, have signed with AEW could be beating Raw in the ratings very, very soon. And if that's the case, WWE better start taking notice because AEW is not playing around. They're getting views and they're gaining an audience by the week here. You don't have to like them. You can hate them all you want, but they're doing good things and they're building their audience, and that's what a good company should do. Kevin Patrick tried interviewing Charlotte after the match, but she took the opportunity to mock Nikki instead. So again, way to make Nikki look weak. She said no one was in her league. Nikki admitted that she lost, said she was almost a superhero, and I showed myself that I almost could have won. Okay, because that's good. I mean, because, you know, you're the women's champion, but you can almost win. Yikes. Nikki she was confident she could beat Charlotte one-on-one, so she challenged her to a rematch again next week. Why do we got to see this again? Are you going to have Charlotte beat her again? Charlotte, of course, accepted this match, by the way. I don't understand this company. I mean, Nikki better beat Charlotte next week. I mean, of course, it's probably going to be because Rhea attacks Charlotte or something, and Nikki's going to get yet another fluky win. It's not going to mean anything for Nikki. I'm glad she's champion. I'm happy for her. I'm glad she's having a good time. That's great. I love Nikki. I'm sure she's a wonderful lady. But at the same time, this is not how you book pro wrestling. Charlotte gave Nikki a cheap shot and laid her out with a big boot. Again, knocked her out. Good. One weekend, they couldn't wait to bury Nikki Cross. Charlotte dragged Nikki in front of a young fan who held up a Nikki Ash sign and chopped Nikki before knocking her down again with a big boot. This was terrible. This was one of those things, much like the Karrion Kross thing, where you've got a chance to build a new star. Whether I agree with whether or not the gimmick is cheesy and corny or not, they just gave her the title. 1 week in, they beat her. You don't give someone the belt and beat them in a week. You shouldn't beat them at all until they lose the belt. Then you can beat them, fine. But between now and SummerSlam, Nikki Cross should not be taking losses, period. Not only that, they had to humiliate her after the match. Santa Claus was sitting at ringside right next to the girl with the Nikki Ash sign, and he didn't do anything to lift a hand. Some guy with a big white beard. But anyway, but yeah, they had Charlotte just destroy her here. Made Charlotte look like the alpha female, as Charlotte has to look. She has to look like the goddess, the queen. Way to bury your Raw Women's Champion. But anyway, that'll do it. This was not a good show. Monday Night Raw. Again, I pointed out a few good things, but for the most part, this was poorly booked. But anyway, that's my opinion. If you guys like the show, more power to you. I'm glad you do if that's the case. I'm trying not to run down the show too much. I want to be positive, but I know from a fan's perspective who has watched this company for 30-some years, I know when to do right when it comes to pro wrestling booking. I know you may just say I'm a YouTuber, but I've seen enough to know what's a good wrestling show and what's not a good wrestling show, and this is not it. It's got good wrestling on it. It's got great talent, but if you don't have the creative and the owner, Vince, and, of course, Bruce Pritchard and all the booking behind it, it don't matter how good the wrestling is if the show does not tell logical, common sense storytelling with good booking. But that's my opinion. The real question here is, guys, what do you guys think about Monday Night Raw for July 26, 2021. Did you like the show, or are you like me, or are you just totally indifferent to Monday Night Raw nowadays? Please comment down below. Let me know, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and please hit that notification bell so you get all the notifications about when I put up new content right here on this channel. And until my next video, guys, take care.